All right, welcome to part 11 of the East Asian world. This time we're going to talk about the Tokugawa. Well, like I mentioned before, Tokugawa Ieyasu was actually one of these powerful daimyos that developed after the Onin War, right? He controls an actually pretty powerful part of Honshu Island, the Kanto region, right? It's a good vast plain, a lot of good growing land. He is going to found his own capital city. He's going to name it Edo. This is modern-day Tokyo, right? Now, as you know, when Oda Nobunaga was overthrowing the Ashikaga daimyo, ultimately he also conquered the Tokugawa, and he allied with Ieyasu through marriage, right? Which served well for him when Toyotomi Hideyoshi filled in the power vacuum, right? Tokugawa was right there to help him do that, right? So he's always been in a position where he's involved with this central authority here in Japan as this unification continues, right? So when Hideyoshi dies, he leaves the Toyotomi shogunate to his son Hideyori, right? Hideyori, though, is too young to operate it, right? And now Tokugawa, as his regent, is just going to begin manipulating things. It's only a matter of time now before the Toyotomi shogunate controlling Japan is going to become the Tokugawa shogunate controlling Japan. Now, the center of support for the Toyotomi daimyo is going to be the city of Osaka, right? When Tokugawa Ieyasu is going to exert his power and effectively sideline Hideyori, the Toyotomi supporters are going to rise up. A great battle is going to ensue between the two forces. This battle is known as the Battle of Sekigahara. The Battle of Sekigahara will take place on October 21st, 1600. It's going to put 70,000 troops under Tokugawa Ieyasu up against a Toyotomi supporter named Ishihara Mitsunari. Mitsunari had a force of about 80,000 troops. Now, Ieyasu is going to defeat Mitsunari here at Sekigahara and even capture Mitsunari, who he'll parade him around and execute him. The remainders of the Toyotomi forces will all retreat back into Osaka. They'll barricade themselves into the fortress city, and they'll manage to hold out there until 1615. So for the next 15 years, they'll be holed up there, right? In 1603, Ieyasu will declare himself shogun. The Tokugawa shogunate is officially ruling Japan. All right, and he'll only be the shogunate, the head of the Tokugawa shogunate, for a couple of years. In 1605, he is going to actually retire and hand the reins over to his son, Iemitsu. Right. As for Hideyori, what happens to him? Well, he quietly disappears, and he's never heard from again. Once the Tokugawa were in charge, they implemented what's known as the Tokugawa System. And this was just used to reinforce their hold on power. For example, the emperor became nothing more than a figurehead. He was used as a political tool. Of course, he still existed. They still had the emperor, they still had the descendants and all that, but they held no real power. The daimyos themselves were divided up. They were put into distinct categories. You had collateral, house, and outer daimyos. The collateral daimyos was the smallest group, and in order to be a collateral daimyo, you had to be a direct descendant of Ieyasu. That was the only way. So typically there was no more than about 23 of these collateral daimyos, right? And they were the ones closest to the center and the ones with the most power. The next level down were the house daimyos, typically around 145 of them. These were people who were hereditarily loyal to the Tokugawa. And then finally you had the outer, there was around 98 of them, which were self-made daimyos who somehow had managed to survive the power shift and not get destroyed after the fall of the Oda or the Toyotomi shogunates, right? Now, if you were a member of one of these, if you're the head of one of these daimyos, you were required to live in Edo. You had to live there once every other year. So you can spend 1 year there, and the next year in your land, in your territory. However, your wife and your children had to live in Edo full time. This way, the Tokugawa had some power or influence over you. You weren't sitting there conspiring to overthrow the Tokugawa because they could just turn around and kill your wife and kids. They actually stationed guards around the complex where the wives and children lived to make sure that no women snuck out or no guns were ever snuck in. Under the Tokugawa and under Iemitsu, the decision was made to eliminate Christianity in Japan altogether, to get rid of the rest of those Jesuits. Now, by this point, and remember there's already a lot of persecution going on, even as the Toyotomi, the remainder of the remaining concentration of Jesuits were still holed up in that city of Nagasaki. So when they heard that Iemitsu was going to expel the remainder of the Jesuits, they rebelled. This rebellion becomes known as the Shimbara Rebellion, right? They rose up in revolt. Now, Iemitsu is going to send 125,000 troops to kick these people, pretty much just all Europeans out. He's had it. The only exception is the Dutch. The Dutch are going to provide the weaponry and the gunpowder to help him do this in exchange for being allowed to hold a very small trade legation in the now Jesuit-free Nagasaki, right? And so in 1639, the Portuguese are expelled, the Jesuits are expelled, right? And the Tokugawa go into a era of strict isolationism, or Sakoku, right? Sakoku literally means country in chains, but you know that's what the word they use for isolation here. Okay. The only trade that happened with Japan and anybody from 1639 until the mid-1800s is going to be with the Dutch in that very specific walled-off portion of Nagasaki. And that was it. It wasn't until the mid-1800s you're going to have the arrival of Admiral Perry and his great Black Fleet, right? And he's going to open Japan back up. But again, that's a conversation for a different lecture.